Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and I'm here with the Subaru WRX TR. And at least until this past week, this was the closest thing that we're gonna get to the STI, at least in this current generation, but this week they dropped the TS, but whatever. What we're gonna do today is go through the best and the rest of this TR and see just how it stacks up. Now, there's a lot about this car that I really like behind the wheel, but there's also a couple things that I think need addressing from a driving perspective, some cons to the driving. Now, this is an old school car that's affordable, and as a result, some of the more modern things are missing. For one, you don't have rev matching on your manual transmission. I believe this and the GR86 and the BRZ are the only manual cars left that don't offer rev matching. It's fine, I can heel and tow on my own, but it is nice to have, especially if you want to drive it hard and you're not great at heel and tow and you want to save your clutch a little bit. This also gets the Recaro seats from the GT trim, but it doesn't get the adaptive suspension from the GT trim. Now that being said, I don't really have an issue with the ride. It's a pretty nice middle ground between firm enough to be sporty and soft enough to be comfortable day to day. And I guess if I'm gonna complain about things behind the wheel, then the shift action isn't my favorite. The pedal box is great, but the shift action just isn't quite on the same tier as that like confident satisfaction that you get from shifting like a Type R. But that's a benchmark transmission, so this is still fine. I just find it hard to complain about manual transmissions in any degree in 2024. So I like the manual here. And I will say, since this is kind of the closest that we're getting to an STI, I would like to have seen a little bit more power from this engine and a little bit more sound from the exhaust. Just feels a little subdued, but you're probably gonna put an exhaust on it anyway. And then when we start to talk about technology, this is kind of the Achilles heel of all the modern Subarus that we've tested recently. It's not that the tech suite is bad, it's just that it's not at the forefront of the segment, you could say. Now, there is a lot I do like about the tech. I like the fact that you get the huge screen and the wireless Apple CarPlay and the Android Auto, and you get the birthday and anniversary list so you never forget dates. But it's just not as modern or robust as some of the competitors from like Hyundai or Toyota. You don't get a full digital instrument cluster, although that is being remedied in the TS. You don't get a head-up display here on the TR, you don't get a wireless charger, and you don't get a 360 camera. And in something that stands for tuner ready, I might expect things like a head-up display. I'm not really expecting a 360 camera from something in this segment. Nothing in this segment really has that, so there always are pros and cons, but the tech is just kind of okay. And then when we start to talk about things like the cargo practicality in the trunk itself, now this is a sedan exclusive car. We don't have the hatchback anymore. We don't have the Lavorg body style that you get in other markets around the world. So I do kind of have to ding it for that when you got things like the GR Corolla and the Civic Type R bringing hatchbacks, but it's not to say that this trunk is impractical. It's 15 cubic feet as rated, but it does feel pretty big and spacious. It's deep, it's wide, and it's got a nice practical opening. And you get some underfloor storage as well. You can't drop the rear seats from the trunk and you don't get a spare, but to be honest, it's a perfectly good trunk and probably practical enough to carry most anything that you'd want to carry. And as we start to talk about price, this one's actually kind of a tough one. Now, I personally kind of classify this thing's main rival as the Hyundai Elantra N. They're about the same size and they make pretty much the same power. And the WRX TR here starts at $41,655, and the Elantra N maxes out at about $35,000. So this is quite a bit more expensive. But this thing also brings all-wheel drive to the equation, and you can get cheaper variants of the WRX, which will be a little bit more competitive with the Hyundai. But the Hyundai gives you all the kit as standard, so it really kind of comes down to whether or not you want or need all-wheel drive. And I have to say here, not on a day like today, but generally speaking in Wisconsin, it is nice to have that all-wheel drive. And we did test this one and the orange WRX that we had a couple years ago in the rain and some inclement weather, and it handled beautifully and stuff like that. So nice peace of mind to have from the WRX. But switching gears and talking about the things that I love about this car, I can't put my finger on necessarily just one thing, but there's something about this car that just has a charm to it. It's the same 2.4 turbo boxer 4-cylinder, same 271 horsepower, same 258 pound-feet of torque, same manual trans, and only a manual trans for the TR that we have here. It's the same torque vectoring all-wheel drive, same center locking diff, but now you've got bigger wheels to allow for the bigger Brembo brakes underneath, and you've wrapped it all in Bridgestone S007s that are a really nice grippy tire that work well. And it's just a sweetheart. it's just weird because it feels just as at home driving to the shops as it would attacking a country road or a back road. And that's kind of without the adaptive suspension of the GT. It has that mixed personality, and it does it really well out of the box without introducing a lot of mechanical or electrical complexity. And there's just something about the charm to this car. I like it. And another part of that comes from the all-wheel drive system that you have here. It was one thing that really stuck out to me in the orange WRX we tried the other year. We had some rain that week, and this thing was so confident in inclement weather. The symmetrical all-wheel drive, the torque vectoring made the car feel really, really planted. A little understeer at the limit on corner entry, but still very fun. It's easy to drive, it's approachable toward the limit, and it's really fun. You're not going to get all-wheel drive from the N cars from Hyundai or the Type R or the Type S from Acura. And the VW stuff isn't going to come with a stick anymore. So if you want a manual with all-wheel drive in this class, it's either this or the GR Corolla. And that's assuming that you can find one that hasn't been marked up to the moon. And then in terms of styling, I will say, honestly, this car has grown on me in the 2 years or whatever it is that it's been out. But I will say a big part of that, at least in today's spec, is the sapphire blue paint that you have. It kind of hides some of the cladding, and it looks fantastic. It looks really expensive for a Subaru or anything in this class. The metal flake in this direct sunlight looks unbelievable. You do, of course, have your big hood scoop, you've got your gray grille, and you've got your textured cladding all the way around the car still, don't worry. But you do have full LED headlights. You've got upgraded wheels and tires for this TR trim. They're Bridgestone S007s, which are very grippy, and they're 245 width. And those are wrapped around upgraded wheels for the TR, and peeking out from underneath are upgraded 6-piston red painted Brembos up front. You've got dual piston in the back. You've also got retuned suspension. There's still not a hatch or a Lavorg, which we talked about before, but the profile looks good. It's a sedan. It's a classic 3-box shape. You get some arching and flaring over your front hips and rear hips as well. And in terms of the back, your taillights kind of do have that sparkle effect that I like, and you get a subtle molded in rear wing. And of course, you have a huge diffuser back there with texture and quad tips to make sure it looks nice and aggressive. But it could sound a little bit more aggressive, I think. Now, I will say, this being the TR trim, let's talk about what the TR trim represents or what it means. It starts to make a lot of sense actually when you consider the high percentage of these Subaru WRXs that get modified. Now TR stands for tuner ready, so they've done a bunch of stuff out of the gate for you. Things like the manual only transmission, things like the retuned suspension to account for the bigger Brembos, the bigger wheels, the more tire. You've got the Recaro seats, you've got the sunroof delete to save some weight, to account for some of these things that have been added. Technically this is still 2 pounds heavier than a Limited, but still, it's pretty good. And when you consider that Subaru has done all of this stuff for you from the factory, and you're gonna get a warranty, it starts to make sense. And price-wise, you'd net out about the same as if you went to the aftermarket to do all these things, so why not get it with a warranty? And I do have to say, I am impressed with the back seat area here. I'm 6'1", sitting behind myself. I've got plenty of knee room in front of me. I do wish I had a little bit more headroom, but if I take my hat off, I'm doing okay. My frizzy hair does start to rub. I don't have climate vents back here. I don't have a climate zone. I've got pretty clear dead blank switches for like a heated rear seat, but I do have USB-C, USB-A, got some mat pockets back here, and I have the same nice materials, the suede, the red stitching, and I even have some cup holders back here. So overall, it's a decent place to be. Just missing a couple little things here and there, and I could do with a little bit more headroom, but overall, totally practical space for adults. And I do want to be sure to mention some of the cabin improvements that they've made here for this TR because they go a long way. I dinged the last WRX on interior quality, and it's still not fooling anyone into thinking it's a luxury car, but it's not pretending to be. But some of the new stuff that you get here does make the car feel more upscale. The Recaros that are heated and powered, at least on the driver's side, are from the GT, and they're very nice and make the car feel more aggressive and premium. You get a suede dash with contrasted red stitching, you've got the faux carbon fiber in your door cards and on your steering wheel, and you've got a big screen with the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto makes it look more modern. And of course that works with the semi-physical climate controls. So it's not an Audi, but it's not priced like an Audi, and I have to say, for what you're getting here and what you're paying, it's pretty good. And then in terms of safety, now this is something that BMW hasn't even given you in their M2 with their manual transmission. You get adaptive cruise here. For 2024, this TR gets eyesight now, so there's 2 cameras on the top of the windshield. And it works with the manual. I've even got lane keep assist, I've got adaptive cruise. I'm impressed that Subaru was able to bring this stuff at the price point that it's at and calibrate it for a manual. Well done. Good pull. Good mid-corner. Okay, okay. Brakes. Okay, let's talk about it. So this is the same Boxer 4. Not a huge amount of torque down low. It kind of wants you to rev the engine out. And I kind of like that. There's so many cars nowadays that are like, just point and squirt, it's gonna take care of you, there's torque everywhere. This kind of brings you into the fold a little bit more. You have to shift yourself. You have to rev match yourself. You have to find and chase the torque. And I kind of like that about it. It's charming. I also like the fact that the brakes, they're not like all the other modern brakes where there's a huge amount of bite at the top of the pedal and then it just kind of bleeds off. This is a progressive build. So you really kind of have to get into the pedal to get the max stopping distance, and I do kind of like that. Third, this is the one I don't like. Second, on power. But it's rewarding to rev out. It's a sweetheart of an engine. It's charming. This thing is charming to drive. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. I also think that with the retuned suspension here, this is probably the best riding WRX that maybe I've been in. It does jitter a little bit over bumps, but when you're trying to drive it hard on a back road such as this, it's kind of perfect. I don't need the adaptive suspension of the GT. The balance is good. There's a little bit of corner entry understeer, but you've got great grip mid-corner from these Bridgestones. The brakes make sense. The seats are really nice and comfortable. It's hard to find anything to complain about here, really. Gotta go higher. It's a good car, man. One of the things though, I do wish it was louder. This, you know, not having an STI, I want to even say, like, this isn't any louder, I don't think, than the normal WRX. Now, like, I understand a percentage of these cars are going to be modified with things like exhaust and tunes and all that stuff, but, you know, from the factory, something that says TR, I was maybe hoping that I would get a little bit more emotion, a little bit more sound drama. You guys know that's what I'm about. It's got a good whine as you wind it out, but I just wish there was a little bit more drama, just a little tiny bit. But the manual transmission's fun to shift. It's hard to complain. There is a charm to this car. There's a naturalness to driving it. There's a naturalness to the balance. You can approach the limit without getting too freaked out, or without, you know, the high possibility of wrapping yourself around a tree, and especially the all-wheel drive. And it'll do that corner at that speed in a torrential downpour, and there is definitely something to be said about that, especially here in Wisconsin. So overall, I do like the charm of the WRX, I have to say. Final thoughts. So that is the best and the rest of the WRX TR. And while not everything is perfect, there is absolutely an inescapable charm that you get from this car. We experienced it in the orange base WRX, and here for this TR with more rubber, more brakes, and some of the little touches here and there, it does add to that charm. So I have to say, I'm a fan. Thanks to Subaru for letting us have a go in your car. Thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.